Welcome. This is Astrology Insight Now, a weekly forecast program with astrology and other ways to help you make the most of your week and to heighten confidence for daily life. It's run by Pamela Cuccinell, that's me, the astrologer, and I invite you to find out more about my work at insightoasis.com. I look forward to your joining us every week. Please share with your friends, and here we go.
How to best prepare for the week of August 18th. August 18th is what I consider a highly productive week for those of us who want to zero in, concentrate, wrap up tasks already in motion. Ideally, all my listeners are involved in some sort of centering practice every day. This is so important at this point in time when we are continually barraged, assaulted, distracted by a gazillion million things on electronics, in the news, in the seeming speeding up of everything that is happening on the planet. And make no mistake, that is accurate as to what's going on. What's happening is that we are in this period situation where we are on a threshold of ideally human elevation, human evolution, acceleration, which can go many different ways or can totally derail. And what we're encountering is a lot of noise where people sense change. And I'm not just talking about, your average change, which is highly stressful for most human beings, like moving, change of life situation, job change, etc. I'm talking about life as we know it change. And so when people are feeling that, understandably, there's a lot of anxiety and panic and grief. So when I look at a week leading up to a new moon, where we're in this kind of preparation period for ideally a reset, if you will, of how we're processing everything that's hitting us, coming at us. And this has been going on for a long time. Some of us, the younger people, this is like all they've ever known. People of a certain age who've been decades on the planet might have a perspective more of, well, it's so chaotic, but I have my youth to look back on, and I'm just going to continue to maintain. Young people, Gen Zs, the Alpha generation, as they've named them, these people have different ways that they're seeing and coping because everything they've ever known has been about pretty much chaos and change. So we, as a collective, ideally are working on how to communicate with all channels. The separate camp mentality really doesn't serve or work well. What's going to work better for all of us is this kind of generational tapping in to see where the wisdom is, where the curiosity, sense of adventuresome is, the idea of we are going to make this work because this is all we have, is something that seems to be much more prevalent in people who haven't known anything else other than this kind of chaotic change. And so when we look at Pluto entering Capricorn in 2008 and reflect on everything that's happened since the onset of this millennium, we realize that we are in this time, like it or not, of acceleration and acceptance, allowance of change, but also not not ignoring the changes that are at foot. So, that being said, we're in the waning moon cycle, the last several days of it before the new moon at the end of the week. And what's the best way to utilize this energetically? Well, the interesting thing is we've got a lot of fluidity this week, which I see as being symbolic of okay, the wave has come on the beach and things are washing away. And how do we look at what the new sandscape appears to be so that we can work with what we have? And yes, as it came in, hopefully we gathered our precious things that we wanted to keep, the shells and rocks and things that were important to us, and are willing to energetically just let move out whatever the sea is going to recycle and change and reinvent and work with what we have before us in a way that's going to be productive. The Monday of the 18th, when the times I give are Eastern time, so keep that in mind depending on where you live. What's going on is that the day opens up with the moon in the sign of Gemini, and it goes void of course, which means that it no longer is going to make geometric to any aspects to any other planet before it leaves the sign. It goes void of course at 7:53 a.m., so that's close to 8 a.m. And then it doesn't enter the next sign until 3:05 p.m. when it enters the sign of Cancer. So anything that's really important to get off your desk, especially messages, text, things that you want to establish before that day gets in motion, you want to get that out before that moon goes void, of course. So either the night before or early in the morning. And then in basically the maximum part of what for a lot of people is their work day until the later afternoon, we have a void, of course, moon in Gemini. So what that means is that we are best served wrapping up with things already in motion, clearing things out. We are past the point of having reprocessed the Mercury retrograde that went on a couple of weeks ago. And so now we're in this great place where we can see where we're at and move forward. As we're moving forward, keep in mind we're also in this end of the waning moon cycle. The new moon happens on Saturday Eastern time. So how do we position ourselves to best take advantage of that thrust that will occur this weekend and then into next week? Doesn't mean you can't start anything new now, but you want to keep in mind where you are in the energetic space of being able to gather interest, get things going, basically find the right winds to let the thing sail in the air. So what's the best way to prepare get that launched. And that's a great way to be using this void of course pocket as just what needs to get out of my way so that I'm in a better position to take charge and move forward. So once the moon enters the sign of Cancer at 3:05 p.m. on Monday, the 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 later afternoon into early evening, we may feel as though we're hitting walls. We're not really sure, how we thought we were going to proceed. Is it really working out? The important thing here is to look at what's actually happening and see, well, maybe I can shelve this, or if it is challenging, what can I learn or how can I work with it in the most graceful way? What's happening when the moon is in early degrees of a cardinal sign is we are encountering that conjunction of Saturn and Neptune, Saturn being the planet that creates structure and says, and at sometimes our fears, because this is what feels limiting in some way. And Neptune it can be this sense of spiritual awakening. It can also be like, nothing is working out exactly as I planned. Things seem to be dissolving under my feet. So you've got these two forces, one that's about dissolution and the other is about concretization in the same place and space from our perspective, Earth looking directly out. And that actually is quite symbolic of what we see around us, where these big structures, these monolithic ways of thinking or being, want to maintain, enforce, take power and control. At the same time, there's this sense of, but the earth is shifting under our feet. How can the old regimes or frames hold? And so there's this tremendous tension. And that works within each of us where, maybe something we've been very attached to or thought this is the way it always is not going to be the way things work. So the lesson here that can be very valuable if we're encountering it emotionally, and this will be the case for some of us because the moon symbolizes, among other things, our deep emotions, is okay, everything is falling apart around me, but I trust I will find a way. The support systems will come. As Mr. Rogers used to say, look for the helpers. There is a promise coming out of what feels like emptiness. And that is, for some of us, a very strong feeling at times. And what's important to recognize is that it is a feeling like, as Thich Nhat Hanh always said, the clouds in the sky, and the clouds are always changing, reshaping, and moving. So once we pass into the later evening, things should feel a little lighter. We may be encountering some anger and frustration, or this may be something that assaults us or follows us into the dream space in some ways, which is a release. The next day, one of the things that's occurring is we are encountering a space of real energetic positivity. And this is one of the delicious points that I'm seeing throughout this week, which speaks about being able to connect, especially to loving forces, feeling a sense of beauty around us. There is a picture in the sky in the early evening on Tuesday between Moon and Jupiter that really talks about let us just feel the absolute beauty and wonderful quality of love. And if you feel that's lacking in your life, put yourself in a place of nature, give yourself some space to step into self love, because that is the well that all love begins in. Love, be gentle to yourself. Absolutely a beautiful, creative afternoon, evening for those of us who are open to tapping into the availability of that. Wednesday, the 20th, the moon goes void, of course, at 8:27 a.m. So if you can, getting up on the early side, savoring the beauty of the morning, just the magic of being alive, no matter how difficult our lives are. And I know life can give us some incredibly difficult passages. The gift, if you can find availability to it, of nature, is an endless resource to tap into and connect with. I've said this before and I'll say it again. There is a lot of concern about saving the earth, what's going on with the earth. What we have to keep really aware of is we're really talking about saving human life, biological life. The earth will shapeshift, recreate herself, and become anew for as long as she exists in the universe. As for human beings, well, that's up to us. So nature is a wonderful restorer. If we look in her, if we allow ourselves space with her, we can always see the regeneration that she knows how to do. Wonderful teacher. So once the moon is void, of course, at 8:27 a.m., she doesn't enter the next sign until 7:17 p.m. in the evening in the sign of Leo. So that entire day is actually void of course. Yet there is still a lot of ability to tap in energetically to much good juice and productivity, because the moon in Cancer is considered, well, her home sign. So even void of course, she is comfortable in that space. And so we can still enjoy levels of tapping in to the wealth of knowledge we can source from emotional intelligence and sensitivity. It's not the logical mind, it's a different way of knowing and accessing. So for those of us that are easy with that energy, especially earth and water signs, doesn't mean everyone can't tap into it, but people with a lot of air and fire don't necessarily have that intrinsic connection to just the innate sensitive knowing. It's a different way of knowing. I mean, all the elements have their wisdom and intelligence. But this particular period, if you're feeling very off, give yourself the space to quiet, if possible, the monkey mind, the fast moving, I want to do, think, feel inspired mind. Instead, just allow yourself a sense of receiving. Not as easy for the yang sign. So when the moon enters Leo, then the yang signs are in their happy space. That's 7:17 p.m. on Wednesday, the 20th. And this is a cooking evening, man. It's creative, it's culturally stimulating, it's the lights are on and action is happening. The thing to keep aware of is that the moon is basically moving into opposition to Pluto, the planet of irrevocable transformation. So the high power lights on, what I picture is, let's say we're in a directorial or some sort of dramatic play and people are, personalities are really ramped up and everything's really charged. As the evening goes on, there can be no, the lights should go over here, this kind of power struggle piece. And this can happen even with a person alone in her own creative space. The important thing is to realize that whatever that struggle, push, energetic back and forth is, to keep the lines of communication open. If the lines of communication are open, you're going to cut through the crap. You're going to get to the essence and heart of what's really important to convey, what the message is. And wow, it is a popping time creatively. Very, very productive. And this moves in to the next day up until about mid-afternoon. What happens then is the moon goes void of course at 2:13 p.m. So that's pretty much the apex of how we are harnessing this. We are really making something like shine. Then we're in this void of course, this very long void of course. The moon is still in the sign of Leo. We can still have a cracking good time. A lot of ideas exchanged, a lot of energy, a lot of passion. Avoid anything contractual. Don't get your hopes too invested in the promises of some angels, because what happens with this void of course that goes into the next day all day, what happens is that everything is exciting, exuberant, over the top. And this can have a negative play as well. It's not like everybody's jazzed and happy. It can also be like a lot of drama and pyrotechnics. And we think, oh my gosh, where is this going to go? It's just hanging on your seats kind of craziness, perhaps. So it could be a lot of puffed up noise with those guys in power who seem to love to call attention to themselves. No names will be mentioned. But that might certainly happen over this period of time into Friday. And so our jobs is to keep tapped in to a sense of childlike wonder. Okay, let's try to play. Let's try to keep inspired. And actually, that verb try is not a good one. Let's say it this way. Let's be inspired. Let's be curious. Let's be tapped in to the divine child within each of us. This is Leo energy I'm talking about. This is that wonder of birth and expectancy, that sense of something is coming in. I can feel it. And so, with that, we want to hold that energetically and not get kidnapped or captured by someone else's drama or uh, derailment of where we want to go. If you can use Thursday evening, Friday into doing something creative or fun, take a long weekend if possible, work on a project that you're engaged in if possible, paint walls, garden, do things that give you a sense of joy. That's a terrific way to use this time. If you're at work and slogging through something that's difficult, also do your best to give yourself little periods or opportunities to relax a bit, share jokes or stories with coworkers, give yourself some space to connect to things that feel less intense and more precious about the wonder of being alive. The moon enters Virgo at 1:24 a.m. on Saturday the 23rd. And then this leads us to the new moon energy, which is exact at 2:07 a.m. So to talk a little about this new moon, it is in a arc of moving towards a picture with the Venus in the sign of late degree Cancer. So as it moves through the sky, it will encounter some patches of the unexpected, things that kind of shift the picture. None of these things are bad. They are things that we can adapt to and figure out new solutions for. The Virgo moon is highly intelligent about understanding the tools at hand to work with, and also keeping its eye on the project that wants to be fulfilled. So ideally, before we've encountered this new moon, we've done our due diligence, especially in that dark of moon period that had those long void of course moons, of deciding where am I putting my energy, thrust, momentum over the next month as I enter this new lunar cycle. How can I help heal, buttress, reinforce either a project already in motion, something you want to start? It could be a therapeutic routine for the body. New moons in Virgo are absolutely fabulous if you have like a health thing you've been needing to do. Okay, I need to exercise differently, eat differently, get on the program that my doctor, wellness person has advised. Wonderful time to get that in motion. And this is a particularly well aspected Virgo new moon to support that. What I see in lunar energy as we are moving through this very chaotic period is we do have a lot of opportunities for support that come in. the value is when we harness them. Sometimes it happens whether we're paying attention to it or not. Astrology works whether you believe in it or not. So you don't have to be paying attention to the lunar cycles to be tapping into the energy. If we're if we're moving in certain directions, this is going to help buoy us up, whether we're aware of it or not. So the weekend is really very productive for kind of getting into that quiet alignment of what we want to make happen. Even if you're at a party with a lot of action and things going on, this is still a time when you can reflect and give yourself some notice of, wow, I'm with people I love. This feels really good. I feel really supported. And, you know, if you're by yourself and you're just in quiet reflection, you're in a space that you create. We are continually creating safe space or scary space in our minds and hearts all the time. We ideally are in control of one thing, and that's ourselves. That's the one thing we are ideally in control of. And sometimes, even though we're in control of that, there's a limit of what we can make happen. And so the moon in Virgo asks us to start with the small stuff. What can we actually do? What blocks can we put together, like one on top of the other? What can we start to make happen? Because the only person we can control is ourselves. The moon doesn't go void of course until Monday. So just enjoy an especially productive time. Sunday, that's when everything can fall into place. Believe it or not.
You have been listening to Astrology Insight Now. Please share with your friends, and if you'd like to make a donation, you can do so at astrologyinsightnow.com. Have a stellar week, and we hope to see you next time.